Straight from the mud, there's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon.
Fueling is the biggest one, and it's something that I've learnt more and more about. Like, ever since we did like the Sub 7 project, like I've always been like a massive fat burner. Like, yeah, I just rip through glycogen. And I think a lot of that probably came from like some of the training that I've done in the past. Like, it just made me burn like glycogen, so I become like, I just rip through it. But yeah, what we generally find is with fueling, for the majority, like the guidelines are for most people 60, 70 grams per hour, and you probably want to have 25 to 30 grams of protein like straight after your session. But what we found with a lot of athletes now is, and like this is happening at, you know, like world tour level, pro level in triathlon, is a lot of like, say like triathletes, they can get to the stage that they probably absorb like 130 grams. For cyclists, because they've not got to run off the bike, they can probably get up to like 150 grams carbohydrates an hour. But the biggest factor, say, when it comes to like carbohydrate intake is, a lot of people think that, you know, like I'm only doing an hour session, I don't really need to fuel for it. But what you're trying to do with the training, you know, if it's like a zone 2 ride or, you know, an easy ride, then probably, yeah, you haven't got to fuel if it's an hour long. But say we start including intensity and we're working at like, I don't know, we're creating like 70 to 90 points an hour, then we're going to rip through glycogen. And what that means is that has an impact on the rest of your day, and also the session that you're trying to, you know, like you're going to do on the following day. And what do we know about training is consistency is key. I think a good guide is generally, you know, like it is like that 60 to 70 grams of carbohydrates an hour, but you might want to increase that, especially if you're going to do like longer course stuff. But you also want to do like, we do like a lot of race specific sessions whereby we'll include like fueling within like that session itself. And that's trying to get like the gut to absorb like the carbohydrate, put it under stress, and then just see what happens. But I think for a lot of people now, they're probably under fueling a lot of the, you know, we've all got this obsession with power to weight, but ultimately a lot, especially for like long course, we can see that that's not as important now. So it is, you know, a lot of this stuff we've got to mess around with to find out what your winning formula is. But fuel is like, you know, it's the golden rule, and recovery after each session. I'm a massive believer in that. Fueling, what do I fuel with, is like a key point. Like when I did triathlon, I actually found it like quite hard to fuel on like gels. There's more that's come on the market since that time. But in training, I like to use like a carbohydrate drink, and I generally use a lot of bars, like solid fuel as I'd call it. But when I get into like race specifics, then generally speaking, it's about taking on more gels, you know, like, and it's trying to get the gut to absorb that. So I think that, like, I don't think that you want to be having like gels like consistently. It's probably not too good for you. But I think it's when you come into the race specific stuff, it's probably trying to fuel on the fuel that you're going to use on like race day. Sometimes you've got to work out what works for you. Like loads of people try different things, and you'll speak to one person, they'll tell you something different to the next. But it is, number one, it's working out the amount of carbohydrate that you need. But then I'd say the next part is working out the fuel that's going to give you that reward based on if that's a time trial or a, you know, like a triathlon or a road race, whatever it is. And also like knowing, you know, like pre-race what you need to then take on board. It's quite a complex area, but it's just addressing what each athlete, you know, like needs. You know, there's definitely parameters that, you know, that's been out there for years. So how long do I fuel before my race? Then generally for most people it's gonna be like 2 to 3 hours before their event. You know, like there's definitely trends, like how many carbohydrates. Well, generally speaking, like 60 to 70 carbs, 30 grams of protein when you finish your you know, like your event. That's not rocket science, but it is quite individual to each person. And then obviously now we've got things like, like sweat rate, all these things that can be measured. It's great. There's loads of companies that are doing this now.